The Tale of the Two Seeds. Moral: growth takes time, and comparison steals joy. In a quiet, green valley between two misty mountains, a gentle farmer planted two seeds, side by side, in the same patch of rich soil. The sun smiled down, the rain fell in perfect measure, and the breeze whispered softly through the grass. One morning, after only 3 days, the first seed burst through the soil. "Look at me," it shouted proudly. "I'm already growing. Soon I'll be a tall, magnificent tree." It looked beside itself and saw that the second seed had not yet surfaced. "What's taking you so long?" the first seed scoffed. "Hurry up, you'll never catch me at this rate." Beneath the soil, the second seed stirred gently. "I'm growing too," it whispered, "just not in the same way. First, I'm building strong roots." The first seed laughed. "Roots? No one can see roots. What matters is what's above the ground. That's where the sun and glory are." As the days passed, the first seed grew taller and prouder. Its stem reached high, its leaves unfurled wide, and birds began to perch on its thin branches. Passers-by stopped to admire it. "What a fast grower," they said. "Such promise." The second seed eventually emerged as a small sprout, barely visible beside its towering neighbor. It never boasted. It simply grew quietly, steadily, and deeply. Its roots stretched far beneath the earth, drinking from hidden springs and anchoring it firmly. "You're still tiny," the tall plant mocked. "Look at you, crawling while I soar. You'll never be strong like me." But the second seed just smiled and focused on growings, lowly, mindfully, deeply. Seasons passed, and the valley changed with them. One spring, dark clouds gathered above the mountains. A fierce storm rolled in, with roaring winds and pounding rain. Trees bent and shook, birds flew for cover, and the ground quivered. The tall plant, now slender and weak-rooted, swayed violently. Its shallow roots couldn't hold it. With a great crash, it fell, torn from the earth. The smaller tree, still not as tall, but rooted, deep, stood firm. The wind pulled at its branches, but its foundation held. When the storm passed, and the sun returned, it was still there, quiet, upright, and alive. The farmer came the next morning. He looked sadly at the fallen plant, then smiled at the smaller tree that had survived the storm. "You grew slowly but wisely," he said. "Patience gave you strength, and strength lasts longer than speed." Years passed, and the small tree grew into a mighty oak. Its trunk thickened, its branches spread wide, and its roots anchored it deep in the earth. Birds nested in its arms, children played in its shade, and travelers rested beneath its cool leaves. It never needed to shout. It never needed to compare. And if you listened closely on a still day, the leaves would whisper, "Grow deep, not fast. Your time will come." In a bustling town filled with artists, lived a quiet girl named Lila. Unlike the others, who painted bold murals and colorful landscapes, Lila never showed her art to anyone. She loved to paint but feared judgment, so she only painted in secret at night, in her small attic room. One evening, while cleaning an old drawer in her grandmother's house, Lila found a strange paintbrush wrapped in velvet. A note beside it read, "This brush reveals what's hidden in the heart. Use it wisely." Curious, she dipped it into her usual paints. But as she painted a tree, something odd happened. The leaves began to shimmer, almost glow, as if they held real sunlight. She tried painting a bird, and it fluttered slightly on the page, as if alive. The brush didn't just paint, it revealed emotion, feeling, and truth. Shocked, Lila tried to paint her own portrait, but when she did, the canvas showed a small, scared version of herself, hunched over, holding back. She quickly covered it with white paint. "I can't let anyone see that," she whispered. Though she was scared, she realized the brush might be a gift. That night, she painted a garden and left it hanging at the town square. The next morning, townsfolk gathered around it, whispering. "It feels so peaceful," said an old man, smiling. "I don't know who painted it," said a shopkeeper, "but it reminded me of my mother's garden." I hadn't thought about her in years. Lila began to leave. More paintings saw families reunited, of lonely people seen, of hope where there had been none. Each one touched someone deeply, though no one knew who the mysterious artist was. The town changed. People became kinder. Strangers smiled at one another. Walls once covered in graffiti were filled with hopeful images. The mayor even offered a reward to find the artist, but Lila never revealed herself. One day, she saw a young boy sitting alone, crying outside a bakery. She sat beside him and asked, "What's wrong?" "I'm not good at anything," he said. "Everyone else shines, but I feel invisible." Lila reached into her bag and gave him the magical brush. "Try painting," she said. He looked puzzled. "But I don't know how." "Just paint how you feel," she said gently. The boy dipped it into some paint, and made a messy picture of a dark room. As he worked, a small light appeared in the corner of the painting, growing, glowing. The more he painted, the more light filled the room. When he finished, he smiled for the first time. Lila stood. Everyone has a light. Sometimes we just need help seeing it. And she walked away, leaving the brush with him. Years later, the boy became a famous painter known not just for his skill, but for the emotion in his work. He always credited a girl with an invisible paintbrush, but no one ever found her. Moral: true talent shines when used to help others, not for praise, but for purpose. In a vast green forest, filled with chirping birds and rustling leaves, lived a beautiful stag. He had magnificent, large antlers that branched out like a royal crown. Every day, he would go to the nearby lake, not just to drink water, but to admire his reflection in the still water. "Look at these antlers," he would say proudly to himself. "So tall, so wide, so grand. I must be the most handsome creature in the forest." He would turn his head from side to side, admiring how his antlers looked from every angle. But whenever his gaze fell to his thin, stick-like legs, his smile would fade. "Ugh," he groaned. "These legs are so skinny, so awkward. If only they were as majestic as my antlers." Despite his complaints, the stag was swift and agile. His legs carried him swiftly through the forest, but he never appreciated them. He continued to praise his antlers and criticize his legs, thinking beauty mattered more than function. One sunny afternoon, as he drank from the lake and admired himself, a sudden noise startled him. Crunching leaves, snapping twigs, he turned quickly and saw a lion stalking toward him. Eyes locked, muscles tensed, ready to pounce. Without a second thought, the stag bolted into the woods. His thin legs moved like lightning, dodging trees and leaping over bushes. The lion roared and gave chase, but the stag was faster than most animals in the forest. He was just about to escape when disaster struck. As he raced through a thicket, his mighty antlers got caught in the low-hanging branches. The very antlers he admired every day had become a trap. He twisted and turned, trying to free himself. The more he struggled, the tighter the branches seemed to hold him. "The legs I hated brought me this far," he thought in panic. "And now the antlers I loved might cost me my life." With a desperate heave, the stag broke free just in time and darted forward. The lion was close, but the stag's legs pushed him faster and farther until he was finally safe, deep in the woods where the lion wouldn't follow. Exhausted and trembling, the stag sat down beside a tree, panting. "I was so foolish," he whispered. "I worshipped my antlers because they looked beautiful, but they nearly led me to death. I hated my legs because they looked weak, but they saved my life." He never again judged himself or others based on appearances. He had learned that strength and value don't always lie in what's flashy or admired, but often in what quietly supports us every day. Moral: never underestimate what seems small or weak. Real strength often lies in what we overlook, and pride in beauty alone can lead to downfall. It was a blazing hot summer afternoon. The sun burned like fire in the sky, and the ground was dry and cracked. Not a single cloud floated above. In a quiet village, a thirsty crow flew from tree to tree, searching for a drop of water. The crow, tired and panting, muttered to himself, "Oh, how dry the world has become. My throat burns, and I haven't seen water for miles. I must find some soon, or I won't last much longer." He flapped his wings slowly, scanning the ground below. Wells were dry, puddles had vanished, and the river had shrunk to a trickle. Just as he was about to give up, a glint of something shiny caught his eye near a small garden. Curious and hopeful, the crow swooped down. There, in the middle of the garden, stood a clay pot partially filled with water. His heart leapt with joy. "Finally," he cawed. "Water!" He flew to the rim of the pot and looked inside, but his joy quickly turned to disappointment. The water was there, but it lay deep at the bottom, beyond the reach of his beak. He tried dipping his head in, balancing on the edge, even flapping his wings to push himself lower, but it was no use. The water level was just too low. The crow hopped back and forth, pacing, thinking. He looked around. There were no other sources of water nearby, but he wasn't ready to give up. "I must think," he said. "There must be a way to raise the water up." Just then, he noticed small pebbles lying scattered around the garden. An idea flashed in his mind. Yes, pebbles. Without wasting a second, the crow picked up a pebble in his beak and dropped it into the pot. Plunk. The water moved slightly. Encouraged, he dropped another. Plink! Then another. And another. One by one, he picked up the stones and dropped them into the pot. Slowly but surely, the water began to rise. The sun beat down on him, and he grew tired. But the crow did not stop. Sweat trickled under his feathers, But he pressed on, determined to quench his thirst. Finally, after what felt like forever, the water level reached the top. With a joyful cry, the crow leaned down and took a long, refreshing sip. Ah, he sighed with relief. That's the sweetest water I've ever tasted. He looked back at the pot full of stones and smiled to himself. I may be small, but I used my brain. That made all the difference. He flew away, feeling refreshed and proud, not just because he had quenched his thirst, but because he had solved the problem using his cleverness and persistence. The villagers, who had watched from afar, were amazed. That little crow taught us all a lesson today, one farmer said. No matter how big the challenge, with a little thought and determination, we can overcome anything. Where there's a will, there's a way. Even the smallest among us can succeed when we stay calm, think smart, and never give up. Many years ago, in the land of Scotland, there lived a brave and noble king named Robert the Bruce. He loved his country deeply and fought many battles to free it from the rule of the English. But sadly, despite his courage, he lost battle after battle. After being defeated 6 times, King Bruce's spirit was broken. His army was scattered, his people were suffering, and he was forced to hide in a cave in the mountains, far away from his kingdom. One stormy night, as the king lay cold and tired inside the cave, he began to doubt himself. Maybe I am not meant to win, he thought. Maybe I should give up and stop trying. As he sat in silence, something small caught his eye. A tiny spider was trying to spin a web in the corner of the cave. The wind was strong, and the walls were slippery, but the spider worked patiently. The king watched as the spider tried to attach its silk to one side of the cave wall. It failed. Then it tried again. It failed once more. The spider tried 6 times to complete its web, and each time, it fell, or the silk broke. King Bruce leaned forward. He felt connected to this little creature. Just like him, the spider had failed 6 times. Would it give up now? But to his surprise, the spider climbed up once again, and on the 7th attempt, it succeeded. The silk caught, and slowly, the web began to form, thread by thread. King Bruce's eyes widened. He smiled for the first time in days. If a tiny spider doesn't give up after 6 failures, then why should a king? He said aloud. Filled with new hope, Robert the Bruce rose from the ground, stood tall, and decided to keep fighting for his country. He left the cave with courage burning in his heart. He gathered the remaining soldiers, inspired them with his determination, and trained his men once again. He fought another battle, and this time, he won. That victory was the beginning of many more, and eventually, Scotland was free. King Robert the Bruce ruled wisely and became one of the most beloved kings in Scottish history. But he never forgot the lesson he learned from the small spider in the cave. Moral: don't lose hope after failure. Even when success seems far away, persistence and patience can lead you to victory. Once upon a time, deep in a lush green forest, there lived a powerful lion who had become very old. Once feared and respected by all animals, he could no longer hunt as swiftly as he used to. Weakened by age, he came up with a clever but cruel idea. I will stop chasing animals, the lion thought. Instead, I'll pretend to be sick and let them come to me. So the lion lay down inside a cave and began groaning loudly, pretending to be very ill. Whenever any animal passed by, the lion would call out in a weak voice, "Oh, dear friend, I am sick. Please come closer. Speak to me one last time." Many animals, out of kindness or curiosity, entered the cave, but they never came out. The lion would wait for them to come close and then pounce. One by one, animals started disappearing from the forest. The wise ones grew suspicious, but the younger ones, unaware of the danger, still approached the cave. One day, a clever fox came wandering near the cave. He had heard rumors about animals going missing, and he knew that the lion was not as strong as before. Still, he was cautious. From a distance, the fox called out, "Good morning, Your Majesty. I've heard that you are unwell. May I come in and visit?" The lion, hearing the fox's voice, replied in his usual weak tone, "Ah, dear fox, please do come in. I am terribly ill and would love your company." But the fox did not move. Instead, he stood outside and looked carefully at the ground near the cave. He noticed many footprints going into the cave, but none coming out. The fox smiled to himself and said loudly, "Your Majesty, I would have come inside to visit you, but I see many footprints going in and none coming out. That tells me all I need to know." The lion, realizing his trick had been discovered, roared in frustration. "You clever little fox," he growled. "You've outsmarted me." The fox laughed and called back, "It's better to be wise than to be strong. especially when danger hides behind kind words. The fox quickly ran away and warned all the other animals in the forest. Thanks to his cleverness, the lion's trap was exposed, and no animal ever entered that cave again. From that day on, the animals became more careful and began to think before trusting others blindly, especially those who used sweet words to hide their true intentions. Moral: never trust blindly, look for the signs, and think wisely. Cunning words can hide dangerous traps, but careful observation and wisdom can save your life.